Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're regular here, you know I review many photographic, audio and video related products. Well, today we're looking at a trilogy of lenses. We're looking at 3 lenses from the Sigma range. And these 3 lenses are from the same range. And they're the Sigma 16mm. 16mm, that's that one here. Great lens, gorgeous quality, beautifully made. So that's for 16mm. Then we're looking at the 30mm. Which is that one there, and then the 56mm, which ironically is the most compact, even though it's the most telephoto one, but there you go. That's the 56mm. Now, these lenses all share the same quality of construction, they all share the same feel. Although the 16mm is longer in length, it's the longest one of all of them, and it's the widest of all 3 of them, but they share the same sort of focus rings. The focus on all 3 of them is focused by wire, which it is on the vast majority of modern day lenses. So you're going to find it a little bit awkward if you're doing video to do rack focusing, if you want to focus on the foreground and the background manually and do it several times. You're almost certainly not going to get to the same point, because obviously it's focused by wire. You haven't got set points where you can mark where your focus point is going to be. That's an issue with all modern day lenses. I use autofocus purely because of my eyesight, and it's just much easier for me. I rely on autofocus on all my cameras that I shoot in the studio here. So out of interest, actually, I'm shooting on the GH5 Mark II as my close-up camera over there. I've got my Sony ZV-E10 with the Zeiss 16-70 lens getting the wider shot just there. I got my ZV-1 just here picking up the close-up shots of all of them, and then I've got another wide shot over there with my A7C using the 35mm lens, FE 35mm lens. And the lighting, I'm playing with 2 new lights that have been sent to me. And I'm going to go into the detail of those lights when I actually do a review of those lights, but they're great because I can control them from my iPhone, which is phenomenal. It's got apps on here for controlling the lights, and there's one control. I'm not going to muck around with it because it's going to upset the lighting, but that is that. Now getting back to the lenses. So these lenses are designed for APS-C bodies and micro four thirds bodies. So they won't work terribly well on full frame bodies. I know with the Sony E mount, I can physically fit it onto my A7C if I had the E mount. These are the ones I have here, the micro four third mounts. But if I had an E mount, I would be able to physically fit it on the A7C or the A7 III or any of the full frame bodies. But it would go into crop sensor mode, which is fine for video, but not really suitable for stills. So this 16mm here, in micro four thirds terms, would be 32mm. So it's not terribly wide. It's getting close to like being a standard lens, but that would be 32mm on a micro four thirds, and that would be 24mm on APS-C body, which is a wide lens. So that would certainly go in your kit bag as a wide lens. Now the weight of these lenses I shall put in the description in the video, actually, or possibly in the description, but certainly in the video. They've got really nicely made lens hoods. They fit really well. I always have been able to recommend these Sigma lenses. They're very well priced as well. They're very competitive for great results, and all 3 of them have a wide aperture of f1.4. So for example, with the 56mm lens, if you want to get lovely bokeh, that lovely separation from what you're filming to the background, this 56mm lens will do that lovely, because that's equivalent on APS-C to 84mm. So it's basically a portrait lens. It's your APS-C portrait lens, and look how compact that is as a portrait lens. Absolutely awesome, and it would give you that, because it's 1.4, it would give you that gorgeous depth of field, and really excellent value for money. The autofocus is snappy. The autofocus is really good with these lenses, so you'll have no issues using it in autofocus. And in fact, the autofocus, even on the new GH5 Mark II and the G9, certainly with its new firmware, is absolutely fantastic. So you still get under certain situations, you still get a little bit of pulsing. So it's not going to be as good as the Sony's and the Canon's dual pixel autofocus. The Sony's phase detect, blimey. There's so many, I work with so many different cameras, my brain goes frazzled as to what the different technologies the different manufacturers use. But Panasonic's is depth and defocus, which is basically contrast detect autofocus. That's a posh word for contrast detect autofocus. The Sony's is got phase detect autofocus points. So it's a hybrid autofocus system that has phase detect as well as contrast detect autofocus points, and that's fantastic, works beautifully. And the Canon's has got dual pixel autofocus. There we go, I remembered it and got it. Yeah, so that's for Sigma 56mm, great lens. And then in the middle of the range, you've got the 30mm. So the 30mm in full frame terms, what do I write that down to be? Yeah, 45. So the Sigma 30mm is 45 on an APS-C, but that's very close to the Nifty 50. So that would be probably classed as a Nifty 50. And obviously on Micro Four Thirds, that's 60mm. So you effectively double it for Micro Four Thirds. And that's, again, quite close to a Nifty 50. So that's a nice lens. And you will get separation from the background to the subjects that you're photographing with that lens. So with the 30 and the 56mm, they make a great investment if you're looking for a compact prime lens that'll give you great, you can even do, say portraits with them, street photography, landscapes, all sorts with these lenses. And with the f1.4 aperture, great in low light and great for that subject separation. And that's the 30mm. So if you see all three of them together, not that it's going to be easy to do, but actually I'll take a photograph and put it in afterwards of the three of them together. Yeah, the 16mm is the longest one. It must be the way the optical construction is that makes this the longest out of the three of them. But we'll have a quick look at some of the images, and also I'm going to swap out the lenses on my GH5 Mark II. I'm not going to move the position of the camera. So this is what we're getting at the moment. I've got my 35 to 100 lens on, my Panasonic 35 f2.8 lens on, and that's set around, in fact that is set at 35. So you're looking at a 70mm lens there on the Panasonic GH5 Mark II. So I'm going to swap them out and leave it in exactly the same position so you can see what the difference is. But first of all, we'll have a quick look at some of the images. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail with these images because I don't want to, because the quality is really good on all three of the cameras. Now, if you want to have a closer look at the image quality, which I would highly recommend you do, take a look at my Flickr page, and you'll find samples of all three on my Flickr page. It'd be much better than trying to view them on this video, because the YouTube compression isn't great, and you're not going to see as good an image as you would on Flickr. So but if we just quickly go through some of these, you can see again, this is the I believe this is the 16mm lens that we're looking at here. This is the 16mm, but being that it's on a Micro Four Thirds body, obviously it's going to be 32mm. So it is still wide, but it's not incredibly wide. But you've got lovely colours, lovely sharpness. It's really, really nice. Even a close-up of that little flower, you've got room to crop. I know people criticise Micro Four Thirds and saying you haven't got the ability to crop. You have, if you're careful with how you take your photographs. If you're shooting in low light, then no, I wouldn't suggest that you crop it too tight, because you will bring out the noise in the image. But if you're shooting outdoors in good lighting, you'll have no problem with Micro Four Thirds. Look, it's wonderful. It is really, really nice format. These lenses produce really nice sharp images. You're not going to get much sharper than that. They are really, really tag sharp images, lovely colours, the sharpness around the edges. everything about, you know, Micro Four Thirds and these lenses. I mean, again, his eyes absolutely are popping out the screen. And this isn't a portrait lens. You wouldn't even think of using this as a portrait lens, unless you're looking to create that sort of effect, you know. So let's now have a look at the Sigma 30mm. There's actually Sigma 30 DC DN, and that's the same with all of them. But again, lovely, lovely sharp images. Look how sharp that is. It is really nice. Again, on a Micro Four Thirds body, these were taken on the GH5 Mark II. On a Micro Four Thirds body, you're looking at it being 60mm. So they're really, really good. I mean, look at his eyeball. Absolutely tag sharp. Beautiful. And again, at 60mm, it's a nice portrait lens. You can see here, looking at this image here, that, you know, everything around him is out of focus. The subject is jumping out. And that's probably because it was shot at f1.4, I'm not sure. And, you know, again, even at a wide aperture, it's the camera itself is picking out the focus points. I mean, look at that. Wow. You know, that's on a Micro Four Thirds body. That's a GH5 Mark II. So it's, you know, absolutely awesome. And the animal eye detect is working beautiful. Working really, really well. All these images are just so sharp. Even in lower light situations. And look how it throws the background out of focus. So that's the 30mm. Now let's have a look at the 56mm. Now obviously the 56mm, I don't know, it's got these borders up now. I've got a grid that's come up. Again, the eyes are lovely and sharp. Really, really nice and sharp. Let's take the grid off. We don't want the grid on. That's gorgeous, isn't it? And again, the 56mm is your perfect portrait lens. Now that'd be a great portrait lens for both APS-C as well as for Micro Four Thirds. APS-C it's 84mm, so that's very, very close to the traditional portrait lens. And on Micro Four Thirds, that's 112mm. So it's quite a long portrait lens, but again, throws the background out of focus and the foreground out of focus. And it's picking up his eyes, or that's for camera's focus. Now you can see here is a classic example of how a student at f1.4, you've got to get your focus point spot on, because your depth is very narrow, very, very narrow. Look, it's picked out the right hand, pin sharp, absolutely gorgeous. But the left eye, out of focus. That isn't because the camera's not working correctly or is a fault with the lens. It's purely because you're shooting at f1.4. So you've really got to nail your focus point. You really have. And when you nail it, it looks absolutely gorgeous. Now on that one, it's the left eye that's beautifully sharp, which is the closest to the camera, but that's what I would like to get in focus rather than the other eye. And the other eye is out of focus, but absolutely gorgeous portrait. Everything's out of focus. It's got nice bokeh. It is really, really nice. And even things that aren't, you know, look how sharp that is. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. Again, these sample images will be put up on my Flickr page, so you can have a look at them there. They're great lenses. They're absolutely fantastic lenses. You know, what I love about doing these YouTube videos, it reminds me on how good certain cameras are or lenses are if I've not used it for a while. I've not used these lenses for a while, so it's just reminded me how fantastic the results are from these three lenses. And as I say, the 16mm is the longest one. That one, quite a big lens, which surprised me really, considering it's a wide angle lens, but it's, you know, really, really nice lens. The 30mm is lighter. That's for 30mm, but it's still compact and not quite as big as the 16mm. And then the 56mm is the most compact out of the three of them. So that's the, yeah, that's the 56mm. So what I'm going to do now is just swap out the lenses on my GH5 Mark II so you can have a look, what the aesthetic is, and how these different lenses work as far as close up, wide angle from the same position. So I'm not going to move the camera position. So let's do that now. So what we're looking at here is the 16mm. And you can see that because it's really wide. I haven't moved the camera position. So if you remember what the camera position was with my other lens, I had that set at 35mm. This is now at 16mm. But in full frame terms, obviously that's 32mm. And the other lens would have been 70mm. So that's about half the actual focal length of what my other lens I was using with. But that's the 16mm on my GH5 Mark II. It's nice, looks really good, colours are good. Everything is being shot on auto white balance. I haven't mucked around with setting manual white balance, but there we go. That's the Sigma 16mm DC DN on my GH5 Mark II. Now we're going to swap that out for the 30mm. So let's do that next. This is now the Sigma 30mm DC DN. And as you can see, it's cropped it in quite a bit tighter. So 30mm in full frame terms is going to be 60mm. But that's now the 30mm on the GH5 Mark II. And again, nice colours, although it is set to auto white balance, nice aesthetic. And I love that framing actually. I mean, that looks really nice for 30mm. So again, being that it's 60mm, that becomes quite a nice portrait lens, even using it for video, using it in the studio. The autofocus is great with this lens, it's fast, it's snappy, so you shouldn't have any issues with autofocus. But I do like that angle, I think that looks pretty nice. It's very close to the 35mm I was using. Well, it was a zoom lens I was using, set at 35, so that was effectively 70mm in full frame terms. This one is effectively 60mm in full frame terms, so not too far apart. So that's the Sigma DC DN 30mm. Now let's put the last lens on, the Sigma 56mm, and that's going to be pretty tight, I think, but we'll have a look, see what it looks like. So I've now put on the 56mm lens, so you can see actually the difference between the 16, the 30 and the 56. So 56 I think is a little bit too tight. I could move the camera further back, but obviously that would defeat the object of showing you the difference between the 16, the 30 and the 56. Because the 56 obviously on micro four thirds would be 112. And that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at 112 in full frame terms. I've got the aperture set to around about f2.5, so it matches the other cameras. I could have set it to f1.4, but I would have to muck around with all the lighting, so I haven't done that. But it still gives you that really nice separation between the foreground and the background. And with the right lenses on micro four thirds, you can achieve that. It's a bit of a nonsense when people say you can't achieve that with micro four thirds. You certainly can achieve it, but you just have to work a little bit differently to how you would with full frame. And it's a great camera. The GH5 Mark II is a great camera. I'm hoping the autofocus is working great. I kind of see no reason why it shouldn't be. There might be a little bit of pulsing in the background, I don't know. We won't know till we look at it when we edit it. But that's the Sigma 56mm on the GH5 Mark II. So there we go. That's the three Sigma DC DN lenses for your APS-C bodies and for your micro four thirds. So we've got the DC DN 16mm, which is that one there, great lens, the 30mm, which is that one, and the 56mm. And you can see where the 16mm is actually the tallest, then the 30, then the 56. As I said earlier, they're designed for APS-C bodies, so they're designed for your Canon EF-M mount, your Sony E mount, and for your micro four thirds mount. Although on micro four thirds, you've got to take into a crop factor of 2 times, as opposed to 1.5 on the Sony and 1.6 on the Canon EF-M. So there we go. Now, as far as software is concerned, I use a lot of software for my photo editing. I use Luminar 4 because it's great. I use Lightroom, but I'm using Capture One mainly at the moment. I just love the layout. I love its look. I love the way it handles files. Editing the files is nice and easy. and it uses, it's got a similar keyboard shortcuts to Lightroom, so the learning curve is pretty straightforward. And obviously you can zoom in, you can do all the things you can do with all the other photo editing software. It's got a catalogue, so you can easily catalogue your images if you need to do that. I do that with all my images because I've got thousands of them, and that's where Capture One comes in really good for that sort of thing. But I have got a reader offer at the moment. I've got a viewer offer at the moment. If you want to download the trial version of Capture One, and I would highly recommend you do that, it don't cost you anything, and you have, I think it's 10 days to play with it before you have to make a decision as to whether you want to buy it or subscribe to it. But download the trial version. I'll put a link to where you can download that from in the description below. If you do decide you want to either subscribe or buy it, use the code AVP10 and you'll get 10% off your purchase price or your subscription price. I think that's a great offer for a great bit of software. Highly recommend it, but I certainly highly recommend downloading the trial version. It don't cost you anything, so you might as well do that and have a play with it. A great bit of software. So there we go. Hope you found this video useful. Please hit the like button and subscribe button if you haven't already done so. And I really, really appreciate that. And leave any comments. I love reading the comments. I don't reply to all of them, but I do reply to as many as I can. So thanks very, very much for that. And if you want to help support the channel, buy me a tea or coffee, and there'll be a link in the description below to that as well. So thanks very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos relating to video and photography. Cheers for now. Bye.